Picture this, August 1982. While the world is listening to Eye of the Tiger, something massive is brewing south of the border. Mexico, a nation booming with oil money, is about to send a shockwave through the entire global financial system. This isn't just a story about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's the story of how a country, seemingly overnight, went bankrupt. It all started with a gusher. In the late 1970s, Mexico discovered massive oil reserves. It was like winning the lottery. The government, led by President López Portillo, promised to administer the abundance, and for a while, they did. Money poured in, new highways, ports, and state-owned companies sprang up everywhere. The economy was growing at an incredible rate, and international banks, flush with cash from oil-producing nations, were lining up to offer Mexico loans. It seemed like a match made in heaven. What could possibly go wrong? The loans were cheap, and the thinking was simple. Oil prices would keep going up forever. Mexico borrowed heavily, not just for development, but also to subsidize food and fuel, keeping everyone happy. The debt ballooned from around $6 billion in the mid-70s to over $80 billion by 1982. The country was living on credit, convinced the black gold beneath their feet was a permanent guarantee. But in finance, nothing is permanent. The first crack appeared in 1981. A global recession hit, and demand for oil slumped. Suddenly, the price of oil, which everyone assumed would only go up, started to fall. At the same time, to combat inflation in the US, interest rates skyrocketed. For Mexico, this was a double punch. The income from their main exports was dropping, while the cost of repaying their massive foreign debt was soaring. The easy money party was coming to a screeching halt. Panic began to set in, but it was happening behind closed doors. Wealthy Mexicans and foreign investors, sensing trouble, started pulling their money out of the country and converting their pesos into dollars. This is called capital flight, and it's like a slow leak in a tire. The government was bleeding foreign currency reserves trying to defend the value of the peso, but it was a losing battle. The public was largely unaware of just how dire the situation was. Then came the weekend that changed everything. On Friday, August 20, 1982, Mexico's finance minister, Jesus Silva Herzog, flew to Washington, D.C. for an emergency meeting. He met with officials from the U.S. Treasury, the Federal Reserve, and the International Monetary Fund, or IMF. His message was stark and terrifying. The party is over. We are out of money. We cannot pay our debts. The announcement hit the global financial community like a thunderbolt. No one had seen it coming. Major American banks had lent so much money to Mexico that a default could have made them insolvent. It wasn't just Mexico's problem anymore. It threatened to bring down the entire Western banking system. The world held its breath. What followed was a frantic weekend of negotiations to pull the global economy back from the brink. The immediate fallout in Mexico was chaos. The government was forced to devalue the peso dramatically. Imagine your life savings losing more than half its value overnight. That's what happened to millions of Mexicans. To stop the capital flight, President López Portillo took an extreme measure. He nationalized the banks and imposed strict currency controls. In a famous, tearful speech, he blamed the bankers and speculators for the crisis, vowing to defend the peso like a dog, but it was too late. The years that followed are known in Mexico as La Década Perdida, the lost decade. The IMF and the US organized a bailout package, but it came with harsh conditions. Mexico had to implement severe austerity measures, cut government spending, slash subsidies, and open up its economy. For the average person, this meant soaring inflation, high unemployment, and a drastic fall in living standards. The dream of oil-fueled prosperity had turned into a nightmare of debt and hardship. So, what are the lessons from that fateful day in 1982? First, it's a powerful reminder that relying on a single commodity, whether it's oil or anything else, is a dangerous gamble. Second, It shows how quickly cheap debt can turn into an anchor that sinks an entire economy. And finally, it highlights how interconnected our world is. A crisis in one country can quickly become a crisis for everyone. This story from 1982 isn't just history. It's a cautionary tale that has echoed in financial crises ever since, from Asia in the 90s to Greece in the 2010s. The day Mexico went bankrupt was a turning point, not just for the nation, but for international finance. It created the blueprint for how the world deals with sovereign debt crises to this day. It's a forgotten story, but one we should all remember. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this dive into financial history interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories you might have missed. Let me know in the comments what other historical events you'd like to see covered. See you in the next one.